Welcome to CBS Mornings.
This morning we're going to begin with some good news.
Just follow me, I'll lead the way.
There's always something new under the sun.
Oh, you just put me in a good mood.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
Well, good morning. Welcome to CBS News Mornings. It is 7 o'clock here in New York City. I'm Anne-Marie Green, and here's a look at the stories grabbing our attention right now. Abject failure. That's how the head of Texas Police described law enforcement's response to the Uvalde school shooting. So find out why he is slamming officers for wasting time during the massacre. Then, bipartisan gun legislation cleared a key hurdle in the Senate. We will tell you what's in the bill and how it could overhaul America's gun laws for the first time in decades. And we are following dramatic testimony on Capitol Hill, where state election officials describe being the target of former President Trump's pressure campaign. We will have all the highlights from the latest January 6th hearing. Plus, the White House is looking to tamp down growing fears of a recession. So we will tell you how America's biggest banks are responding and what it could mean for your finances. And former President Trump's influence on Georgia Republicans could be diminishing following some key primary races.
The numbers don't lie. We had many allegations and we investigated every single one of them. I challenged my team, did we miss anything? They said that there was over 66,000 underage voters. We found that there was actually zero.
So coming up later this hour, we're going to tell you what the primary results mean for Georgia's political future. For the first time in decades, the Senate is moving a step closer to passing bipartisan gun legislation. This is huge. The chamber voted to advance the bill yesterday, but the measure still needs to clear a full Senate and House vote before it heads to the president's desk. That being said, here's what the bill covers. It would expand background checks for people under 21 and also includes incentives for states to pass red flag laws, allowing authorities to seize guns from anyone deemed dangerous. It closes the so-called boyfriend loophole, preventing abusive partners partners convicted of domestic violence, from buying guns. Now, the Senate is hoping to vote on the measure this weekend because they are going on break shortly. But before all of that, a top police official in Texas says that officers had enough manpower and firepower to stop the Uvalde school gunman 3 minutes after he stormed Robb Elementary and eventually killed 19 children and 2 teachers. CBS's Trinity Chavez has the very latest on what we heard. Good morning, Trinity.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. The director of the Texas Department of Public Safety says police wasted crucial time looking for a classroom door key that was actually never needed. In a blistering testimony, the colonel told the Senate committee there is no indication officers even tried to open the door while the gunman was holed up. The head of the Texas Department of Public Safety is blasting the police response to the Uvalde mass shooting. Colonel Steve McGraw testified there were enough armed officers in the school hallway 3 minutes after the gunman walked into the school, but police waited 74 minutes before breaching what is now said to be an unlocked door.
I don't believe, based on the information that we have right now, that that door was ever secured. In fact, I have great reason to believe it wasn't secured. How about trying the door and see if it's unlocked?
McGraw said officers had the manpower, equipment, and time to, quote, neutralize the suspect.
The officers had weapons. The children had none. The officers had body armor. The children had none.
McGraw placed blame on the Uvalde School Police Chief, Pete Arredondo.
The only thing stopping a hallway of dedicated officers from entering room 111 and 112 was the on-scene commander, who decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children.
Arredondo has said he didn't have initial firepower to take on the 18-year-old gunman. In Uvalde Tuesday, the city council voted unanimously against giving Arredondo, who is a council member, a leave of absence from appearing at public meetings. Victims' family members, including the grandmother of 10-year-old Anne-Marie Jo Garza, spoke out.
Please, we're begging. Get this man out of our lives.
Garza, who was killed as she tried to call 911, received one of the Girl Scouts' highest honors earlier this month for giving her life to save others. Uvalde Mayor Don McLaughlin announced on Tuesday that Robb Elementary School will be demolished. And while he did not give a timeline, he said at a council meeting, quote, "You can never ask a child to go back or a teacher to go back in that school ever." Anne-Marie?
It's so true. You mentioned that Chief Arredondo was also on the city council. He wanted a leave of absence so he wouldn't have to attend these public meetings. That was denied. Do we know the reason?
Right now, that is still unclear, but denying him a leave of absence sets up a potential departure as a council member if he misses a third consecutive meeting. Now, he won election to the council shortly before the shooting, but has not appeared at 2 council meetings since then. Anne-Marie?
Yeah, Trinity, I don't expect him to show up anytime soon. Thank you very much, Trinity. Well, President Biden is calling for a federal gas tax holiday to help ease that pain at the pump. He wants Congress to suspend federal gas and diesel taxes for the next 3 months. Well, the president also demanded that states take similar action or provide some type of relief as the busy summer travel season gets underway. However, many lawmakers and economists remain skeptical over a gas tax holiday, saying that the move doesn't really solve the root problem. And we are following a horrific tragedy in eastern Afghanistan where a powerful earthquake has killed 1,000 people and injured more than 1,500 others. It happened near Pakistan's border earlier this morning. Rescue teams are desperately searching for survivors across this extremely rural and mountainous region. We know that the magnitude of the quake was around 6 and the epicenter was about 200 miles southeast of the city of Kabul. Seismologists say that the quake was felt by more than 100 million people in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. Buildings and homes collapsed while landslides threatened rescue efforts. Turning back to Washington now, we are learning new details about former President Trump's efforts to pressure state officials into overturning results from the 2020 election. During the January 6th committee's 4th public hearing yesterday, Arizona and Georgia officials talked not only about the pressure they faced from Trump and his allies to stop Biden's win, but also described threats they faced from Trump supporters.
If I would have never decided to be an elections worker, like, I could have done anything else, but that's what I decided to do. And now people are lying and spreading rumors and lies and attacking my mom. I'm her only child. Going to my grandmother's house. I'm her only grandchild. I felt horrible for picking this job.
The next public hearing is scheduled for tomorrow, where the panel says that it will focus on Trump's efforts to interfere with the Justice Department. We're going to talk more about this, though, so stick around for a conversation later. Jurors in a California civil trial found that Bill Cosby sexually abused a 16-year-old girl at the Playboy Mansion in 1975. The Los Angeles County jury ruled in favor of Judy Huth, who is now 64 years old, and awarded her $500,000. The decision comes nearly a year after a Pennsylvania court threw out Cosby's sexual assault conviction and freed him from prison.
I was surprised, totally happy. You know, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know which way anything was going to go.
Cosby did not attend the civil trial. He has repeatedly denied Huth's allegations, and his spokesman says that Cosby will appeal. Well, there were scary scenes at Miami's main airport after a plane landed and then it caught fire. So coming up, we're going to tell you how it all happened yesterday and what officials are doing in response. And new settlements have been announced in several sexual misconduct lawsuits against Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson. We'll have the details on that ahead. But first, it is 7:08 here on the East Coast. It's time to check your local weather.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It's gonna be big!
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars.
Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year.
I have no idea how much money I have made over the past year. That's like, wow.
Big rewards.
There's gold in them, there are hills, as they say.
Bigger risks.
The market's down, but it's gonna bounce back. It's crypto.
Is it a gold rush or fool's gold?
It's our metaverse, our story. Peace out, y'all.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Stream now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
This week on 60 Minutes.
That's incredible.
The 60 Minutes.
60 Minutes, 60 Minutes.
Are you ready for some tough questions?
Let me ask you this.
You know how this sounds.
What's your response to that?
60 Minutes Sundays on CBS.
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
Let's get the forecast from our partners at the Weather Channel.
Here we are in our virtual view.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
This is our virtual view, what it actually looks like.
Those are some of the best graphics I've seen.
Spare no expense, Gail.
We experience the weather in a whole new way.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Well, the time now is 7:12 in Miami. Look at that skyline. Did you know Florida is the only state that did not pre-order vaccines for children under the age of 5 years old? COVID vaccines, that is. Meanwhile, it's the same time here in New York City. CBS News Mornings is back with a look at some of the stories that you may have missed while you were offline. 4 civil lawsuits alleging sexual misconduct by Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson could now go to trial. 20 other cases against him were officially settled yesterday. Watson is accused of harassing women during massage appointments when he played for the Houston Texans. He has denied wrongdoing. Tampa Bay Buccaneers tight end Rob Gronkowski is retiring again. The 33-year-old originally left the league in 2019 after spending 9 seasons with the Patriots. He was back on the field the following year, though, joining Tom Brady and the Bucs. Gronkowski is a 4-time Super Bowl champion. He says this time it's a real retirement. And a new Supreme Court ruling could have implications for religious organizations' access to taxpayer money. In a 6-3 decision, the justices said that it was unconstitutional for Maine to bar state institution aid from going to religious schools. Well, investigators are looking into what happened and what caused a plane's landing gear to collapse and then catch fire in Florida yesterday. It happened when a flight operated by the Dominican airline Red Air was landing at Miami International Airport. Fire crews were able to put out the flames, and 3 people were taken to the hospital, though with just minor injuries. In a statement, Red Air expressed solidarity with the passengers and crew. A scorching heat wave is impacting much of the U.S., and more temperature records could be broken today. Let's bring in meteorologist Jim Cantori from our partners at the Weather Channel. How bad is it going to get, Jim?
Hey, good morning, Anne-Marie. In a nutshell, we're talking about century-degree temperatures across the southeast, triple-digit temps, if you want to call them that, and a heavy rain and flood threat across the northeast, along with some damaging wind and possibly even some small hail. So that's what we're going to be looking at today in a little place we call the warm sector here. If you're north of all this, much cooler readings into New England, but even you, too, will deal with the heat by the time we get into the latter part of the weekend. Here's that flood threat that I talked about, essentially from central New York all the way down through central Pennsylvania, the Susquehanna Valley. You're in this, Baltimore, Washington, even western Maryland. Get ready for repeated downpours, heavy downpours today, just one right after the other. As a matter of fact, the model starts to fire things up right after lunch today. Look at these storms just dropping southeast, and then when they move southeast, more fire, more develop, more move southeast. So it's just like a broken record in through here in terms of what we're seeing, and that's how you get flooding. Especially with the heavy moisture content that we have in the air and through here. Once we get toward the late overnight hours and tomorrow morning, things begin to wind down in terms of those showers. But for some, it's just hot. There won't be a cloud in the sky in places like Atlanta and Birmingham and Charlotte. And we're talking about triple-digit heat, record highs galore all over the place, back to the Mississippi Valley and into Texas as well. And it's not just one day, it's 2 days of this before we finally get a chance to start coming back to normal readings. Hey, you can watch the Weather Channel on cable and now live on your favorite TV streaming devices. And Anne-Marie, temperatures in the southeast, as I mentioned, returning closer to average by the weekend. But think about it. It's summer, so that means it's going to be hot.
Yeah, that's what it means, but does it have to be this hot, Jim? Thank you very much. You can also get the latest on the weather in your area on the CBS News app. Our app gives you access to all of our CBS News national and local streams for free, anytime, anywhere. Time now is 7:15, and this is a live look at New York's Times Square, home of CBS Mornings. Tony Jacoble is standing by with a preview of the show. Tony, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Anne-Marie. Ahead on CBS Mornings, a bipartisan breakthrough on gun reform. It seems to be taking shape. We're going to have the latest on where the talks stand and when Congress could vote on new legislation. Plus, political ads, they are flooding your screens once again, but do not believe everything you hear. We got a first-hand look at how even when they contain flat-out lies, your local stations are actually powerless to keep them off the air. Powerless. And it's been quite the year for actor Simu Liu, and he's got quite the story to tell as well. We're going to hear from Marvel's first ever Asian superhero about the highs and the lows of his life and his amazing career. All that and more at 8.
All right, see you at 8, Tony. Thank you very much. So we are following several major developing stories in the next half hour. We're going to have good conversations. A bipartisan gun reform bill cleared a major hurdle in the Senate. We're going to tell you what's in the legislation and how it could transform gun laws across the country. And dramatic testimony from election workers revealed new details about former President Trump's efforts to challenge the 2020 race in several states. We're going to have all the highlights from yesterday's January 6th hearing. Plus, the results are in from the latest primaries. We are tracking some of the top races in Georgia, where several of Trump's picks face major blows. You're streaming CBS News Mornings.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It's gonna be big!
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars. Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year.
I have no idea how much money I have made over the past year. That's like, wow.
Big rewards.
There's gold in them, their hills, as they say.
Bigger risks.
The market's down, but it's gonna bounce back. It's crypto.
Is it a gold rush or fool's gold?
It's our metaverse, our story. Peace out, y'all.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Stream now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
This week on 60 Minutes,
That's incredible.
The 60 Minutes.
60 Minutes, 60 Minutes.
Are you ready for some tough questions?
Let me ask you this.
You know how this sounds.
What's your response to that?
60 Minutes Sundays on CBS.
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
Let's get the forecast from our partners at the Weather Channel.
Here we are in our virtual view.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
This is our virtual view, what it actually looks like.
Those are some of the best graphics I've seen.
Spare no expense, Gail.
We experience the weather in a whole new way.
Go to the ends of the earth
Right now.
We got something crazy.
and reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
We found it.
You're kidding me!
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Go to the ends of the earth
Right now.
We got something crazy.
and reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Welcome back to CBS News Mornings. The time now is 7:21. Let's get you caught up on some of the news that you may have missed. The Senate is moving a step closer to passing a bipartisan gun bill for the first time in decades. The chamber voted to advance the legislation yesterday, but it still needs to clear a full Senate and House vote before heading to the president's desk. Jurors in California found Bill Cosby guilty of sexually abusing a 16-year-old girl at the Playboy Mansion in 1975. The woman, who is now 64 years old, was awarded $500,000 in the civil trial. And at least 1,000 people are dead and more than 1,500 others are injured after a powerful earthquake hit eastern Afghanistan. It happened near Pakistan's border earlier this morning, and rescue teams are desperately searching for survivors across this extremely rural and mountainous region. We'll be right back.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It's gonna be big.
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars.
Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year.
I have no idea how much money I have made over the past year. That's like, wow.
Big rewards.
There's gold in them, their hills, as they say.
Bigger risks.
The market's down, but it's going to bounce back. It's crypto.
Is it a gold rush or fool's gold?
It's our metaverse, our story. Peace out, y'all.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Stream now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
This week on 60 Minutes.
That's incredible.
The 60 Minutes.
60 Minutes. 60 Minutes.
Are you ready for some tough questions?
Let me ask you this.
You know how this sounds.
What's your response to that?
60 Minutes Sundays on CBS.
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
Let's get the forecast from our partners at the Weather Channel.
Here we are in our virtual view.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
This is our virtual view, what it actually looks like.
Those are some of the best graphics I've seen.
Spare no expense, Gail.
We experience the weather in a whole new way.
Go to the ends of the earth
Right now.
We got something crazy.
and reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Todd.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
We found it.
You're kidding me!
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Well, we are learning new details about former President Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. During yesterday's January 6th hearing, state officials and former election workers described how Trump and his allies pushed them to change votes and the series of threats they faced following the election. Our congressional correspondent Scott McFarland reports.
In the chaotic days after the 2020 election and weeks before the January 6th riot, Arizona's State House Speaker, Republican Rusty Bowers, testified he stood up to Trump and his legal team's repeated attempts to overturn the election results.
You are asking me to do something against my oath, and I will not break my oath.
Bowers says former Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani was relentless, claiming he had evidence of election fraud, but never producing any.
He said, we've got lots of theories, we just don't have the evidence.
Bowers' resistance has come at an enormous personal cost to him and his family.
We have various groups come by, and they have had video panel trucks with videos of me proclaiming me to be a pedophile and a pervert.
The stories of harassment and pressure were echoed in Georgia.
Why wouldn't you want to find the right answer, Brad, instead of keep saying that the numbers are right?
Where Trump and his lawyers asked the state's officials to decertify their electors and investigate baseless claims of fraud.
We just followed the law and we followed the Constitution. And at the end of the day, President Trump came up short.
The committee also revealed text messages between a staffer to Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson and a top aide to then Vice President Mike Pence, suggesting the senator wanted to deliver a slate of fake electors to Pence on the Senate floor January 6th, but was told not to. A spokesperson for Johnson denied the claim.
Yeah, I was not involved in this at all.
Some of the most emotional testimony of the day came from Georgia election worker Shay Moss, who said she and her mother have experienced harassment after Trump falsely accused them of bringing in fake ballots.
I don't want to go anywhere. I second guess everything that I do. It's affecting my life in a major way, in every way, all because of lies, for me doing my job.
Her mother, Ruby Friedman, testified that there's nowhere they feel safe now.
Do you know how it feels to have the President of the United States to target you? The President of the United States is supposed to represent every American, not to target one.
So Scott McFarland is here to discuss with us. Geez, Scott, I don't know. I mean, I really yesterday's hearing was a doozy for me, and I think that part of the reason was we knew the kind of pressure that elected officials were under in Georgia, but then we learned new information. We learned about the threats of physical threats, the threats to their life that they had to endure, and then we learned about, regular people. There you have Shay Moss and her mother who volunteered, were proud to be participating in the election process, and then found themselves in the crosshairs, being named by the President of the United States and enduring the same level of threats. And I kept on thinking, were they protected in any way? Do we know anything about the level of security that they may have received, and I also thought, with the testimony today, they might find themselves once again the target of threats. And are they being given any type of security?
The members of the January 6th committee have said this is an ongoing threat to local officials who stood up to Trump. Not a prior threat, not a piece of history, but an ongoing risk. And you see the pattern forming here. It's clear as day. Last week, this committee talked about the pressure campaign on Mike Pence, then the physical threat and the near-death experience he had here January 6th. Yesterday in this hearing, they described the pressure campaign on these local officials from Georgia and from Arizona that now has manifested itself on physical threats and death threats against these people. This is a deliberate argument and a deliberate pattern the committee is forming. As it makes its argument, they believe Donald Trump was part of a conspiracy to defraud the United States and gave rise through his words and actions to physical threats against people who defy him.
And it wasn't just the elected officials who defied him. There were those people that they had kind of taken on as basically fake electors. We heard some testimony from a couple of them who were under the impression that what they were doing was fine. No one told them that one campaign attorney after another were backing away from the plot. And had it been successful, it would have been highly illegal. And there seemed to be a complete disregard to, what the fallout would be for those people. I'm wondering if at all, because these are people who supported President Trump. Have we heard from the president at all in response to this hearing yesterday?
And the president continues to argue what many House Republicans argue, that this committee is not properly authorized, not properly composed. The president, the former president, calls it the unselect January 6th committee. Republicans are critical that their choices for this committee were not allowed on the committee, that Speaker Nancy Pelosi selected all 9 members. That also, though, has deprived Republicans of the ability to counterpunch during these hearings, to give a dissenting or contrarian voice. So, as Americans watch, they get a very well choreographed, very well organized, speaking with one voice committee and their presentation. You mentioned that there's obviously a lot of discussion of the fake electors. I actually think some of that was overlooked yesterday due to the compelling emotional nature of the testimony from the elected officials. But these fake electors, they sounds cartoonish almost. It is radioactive to U.S. democracy. It could have been crippling, if not devastating, to U.S. democracy. I expect the committee to release more of what they found on fake electors in their final written report, which comes later this summer or early this fall.
So we know that the 5th hearing is going to be focusing on the pressure campaign that the Justice Department faced. But we also learned yesterday that the committee is going to be deposing a British documentary filmmaker. His name is Alex Holder, who had been filming a series surrounding the final weeks of Trump's re-election campaign in 2020. And as I understand it, he may have been in the room where some of these conversations were happening.
Alex Holder, in a social media post, promises that what he has recorded is never-before-seen images from here, January 6th, and exclusive interviews with the former president and the former president's children. Now, documentarians still trying to market his material using phrases like exclusive and never before seen, but that obviously whetted the appetite of the January 6th committee, which not only requested via subpoena his videos, but a deposition. That deposition will be given tomorrow, according to Alex Holder. Tomorrow, of course, is that 5th public hearing of the January 6th committee. Very busy day as they look into what they say is 11th hour interference by Donald Trump on the U.S. Justice Department. I'll note, Anne-Marie, one of the witnesses tomorrow is Jeffrey Rosen, the former acting U.S. Attorney General, somebody we haven't heard much from in the past 17 months. Could be pivotal.
Yeah, I agree. Scott, thank you very much. So for the first time in decades, the Senate took a major step toward passing new gun legislation, but the measure still faces several hurdles before making it to the president's desk. Ed O'Keefe explains.
The motion is agreed to.
Overnight, the Senate took its first steps towards passing major gun-related legislation in an attempt to address recent mass shootings in New York, Texas, and California. The bill is a bipartisan deal that would expand gun background checks for people under 21, allowing up to 10 business days to review juvenile and mental health records. It provides federal money for states enacting new red flag laws designed to temporarily seize guns from people deemed dangerous. And it closes the so-called boyfriend loophole, preventing partners convicted of domestic abuse who live outside a victim's home from buying a gun.
We have a chance to break this 30-year period of silence. It is a compromise. It is a bipartisan compromise.
There's also hundreds of millions of dollars more for mental health and safety resources in schools, plus tough new penalties for those that buy and then turn around and sell a weapon to anyone barred from owning guns.
I want to make sure we actually do something useful, something that is capable of becoming a law.
The National Rifle Association opposes the agreement, saying it does little to truly address violent crime and opens the door to unnecessary burdens on the exercise of Second Amendment freedom. But that doesn't seem to bother negotiators, eager to show Congress can do something, anything, to address gun crimes.
It's a good start, and I think it's going to give us a lot of help for children.
Here at the White House, aides say President Biden is supportive of this deal. We may hear him say more about it later today. Senate leaders anticipate the legislation will be passed by them by the end of this week. And then over in the House, Speaker Pelosi says she's hoping to hold a vote on it as soon as possible. Anne-Marie?
I know that the president said that he was pleased with it, even though he's not getting everything that he asked for. When it comes to the sentiment among Republicans, is the overall mood on gun legislation, has that changed significantly? Because we heard Mitch McConnell sort of praise this bipartisan effort, which I don't know if we would have heard that, a few years ago.
Let's remember something. This isn't just gun legislation. This is gun-related and mental health legislation. If you're somebody who supports expanding universal background checks, banning assault weapons, enacting federal red flag laws, this is not your bill. If you're somebody who wants tougher school security, much more money poured into mental health in order to address the concerns that a lot of these shooters have mental health issues, this is kind of your bill. If you're somebody who's concerned about the boyfriend loophole, or the idea that somebody who might be convicted of abusing a woman but doesn't live with her because he's not the boyfriend, he's not the husband, maybe he's an ex-boyfriend, he now could potentially have his gun rights revoked at least for 5 years. That's in this bill. There is expansion of background checks for people between the ages of 18 and 21. So there's modest changes, plus hundreds of millions of dollars now to address mental health and school safety concerns. And that's most of the stuff that Republicans like to see. They understand expand background checks for younger users because we've seen so many shootings in recent years committed by people between the ages of 18 and 21. They can appreciate that putting up more federal money for states that decide to do red flag laws is okay. So it's not done at the federal level, but it maintains states' rights and lets them decide. That's why you're seeing 14 Republicans last night move forward with this idea of debating the bill and then likely to support it as well. That was the magic sauce in this evenly divided 50-50 Senate. We'll see how it does over in the House, because Democrats understand, again, not everything is in there. And you see in their statements, they say, this is good, good first start, great to see bipartisanship, but the fight isn't over. So you will see Democrats campaign for this going into the fall, saying we got to put more Democrats in Congress to try to get it done. And there are Republicans opposed to this, saying, first of all, it was written really quick and you asked us to vote on it before we got a chance to read it. And it infringes on Second Amendment rights. That's why the National Rifle Association is also opposed. But either way, Anne-Marie, in a town that can rarely agree on things like when to have lunch, it's impressive to see that they're debating this and likely going to pass it in a true sense of bipartisan compromise.
Ed, I will sort of acknowledge this move that, we haven't seen anything close to this in a very long time. So it's pretty good. Ed, thank you very much.
Take care.
Meanwhile, a top Texas police official says that authorities could have stopped the deadly school shooting in Uvalde in just minutes. Stephen McCraw, the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, testified yesterday about law enforcement's response to the massacre. And he also said that the classroom door was likely unlocked when officers scrambled to find a key. a key they probably didn't need. CBS News correspondent Omar Villafranca attended the meeting where family members of the victims expressed their outrage as this new information came to light. Omar, good morning.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
So listen, Omar, let's talk about this. You've been on the ground in Uvalde for some time now, and the information that we have been getting since the day of the shooting and today, it sort of is constantly evolving. And now we hear that at least this officer believes that the officers on the scene, they had enough manpower, they had enough gunpowder, and they probably didn't need the key that they had spent an hour looking for. How has that changed the sentiment on the ground in Uvalde from the people who live there as new information is coming to light?
Well, it kind of puts everybody in the community through like a whiplash of emotions, from anger to anguish. When they hear that the door wasn't even checked by the breach teams while they were looking for keys for an hour, people just, they get angry, and then they start thinking, could that have saved more lives? So it really is a boomerang of emotions for people here. Mind you, in late May when this happened, the narrative kept on changing every day. And that's when we started learning about the delayed police response here. That was a lot of anger as well. Now, as the investigation has continued with DPS and things have kind of moved from Austin, there's been some slow leaks coming out. And that's kind of upsetting people, especially here in the city of Uvalde, not just the community around here, but across the city here. I mean, we talked to the mayor yesterday. I asked him when the last time he was briefed by DPS on the state of the investigation. He told me May 25th. That's the day after the massacre happened. He says he's basically been shut out of the investigation, not even being briefed as the mayor of the city where this happened. He's upset. He's mad at the Uvalde County DA, who says that didn't want information let out. He's upset that DPS hasn't briefed him. He says he's called, does not get called back. So he was naming names at that meeting last night. It wasn't just people who were calling for Arredondo to be fired. It was the mayor saying, he literally said, and I quote, "I can't do a damn thing," and he is mad about it.
Here's the thing. We are hearing only now about this possibly unlocked door. Why has it taken so long for that information to come to light?
Well, it is an investigation, and I've covered enough of these that law enforcement usually tries to keep things under wraps until everything's done. They're not going to serve a meal up until everything is cooked. We're getting this information from leaks. And that's kind of the media's job to find out information, because a lot of families here, as we mentioned, feel that they're left in the dark. They haven't heard any information. The people who lost, 19 parents here and the 2 teachers, they're basically getting their updates not directly from DPS, they're getting it from media leaks. And that can be, tough and distracting as well. They want to find out what's right, what's wrong. They're hearing it from the media, not from a source that is a law enforcement. So that's where this confusion is. And anytime there's more news that trickles out, it just makes them take a deep breath and try to process it.
Yeah, I thought, this is the environment where misinformation flourishes, right? Where the facts, in sort of quotation marks, keep shifting and you don't know who the official source is. And you're right. It's mostly because of media reports sort of pushing officials to come clean that we're getting additional information, sort of piecemeal. We've just been talking about the gun legislation negotiations in Washington. I'm curious, this is probably the most we've seen in terms of movement on gun legislation in decades. Have you been speaking to the people there in Uvalde? How do they feel about it?
Well, mind you, this is all very new, and a lot of people here are focused on the local issues. I mean, the worst thing that could ever happen to them has already happened. Do they want to prevent this from happening again? Yes. Are they paying attention to the gun legislation? Absolutely. But their main thing that they're talking about right now is Pete Arredondo. There's some people who are saying here on the gun legislation, okay, that's great, but they want to see things get passed in Washington, D.C. And as Ed just mentioned beforehand, that's a process, and that takes a lot of faith to happen. They're focused on their local issues right here. I mean, there are people who are saying that absolutely something needs to be done about gun legislation, but they're focused about they're focusing on what's happening here behind me. I mean, this memorial is still up here at this school. We just learned last night, officially from the mayor, that they're going to bulldoze this school. He says he never wants any other student or teachers or parents to have to walk back into this school and deal this. How they pay for that, that's another thing that they're looking at. So people are paying attention to gun legislation, but they're also looking at what's in front of them right now.
Yeah, understandable. They need answers. They need to heal. It makes a lot of sense. Omar, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
So we are following all the latest results now from key primary runoff races, especially in Alabama and Georgia. We're going to take a closer look at how former President Trump's endorsement helped and may have hurt some candidates. That's coming up next. We'll be right back.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It's gonna be big!
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars.
Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year. I have no idea how much money I have made over the past year. That's like, wow!
Big rewards.
There's gold in them, there are hills, as they say.
Bigger risks.
The market's down, but it's gonna bounce back. It's crypto.
Is it a gold rush or fool's gold?
It's our metaverse, our story. Peace out, y'all.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Stream now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before. That's correct. Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
This week on 60 Minutes.
That's incredible.
The 60 Minutes.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
Are you ready for some tough questions?
Let me ask you this.
You know how this sounds.
What's your response to that?
60 Minutes Sundays on CBS.
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
Let's get the forecast from our partners at the Weather Channel. Here we are in our virtual view.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
This is our virtual view, what it actually looks like. Those are some of the best graphics I've seen.
Spare no expense, Gail. We experience the weather in a whole new way.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
The whiplash continues on Wall Street. Stock futures are down across the board for all of the major indexes ahead of today's opening bell. And this comes after markets rallied yesterday to claw back some of the heavy losses from last week. Kellogg says it's splitting into 3 companies. Each business will mainly focus on cereals, snacks, and plant-based foods. And this comes after the company made more than $14 billion in sales last year. And several major investment banks are increasing their projections about a recession, including Goldman Sachs and Citigroup. Goldman now says there's a 30% likelihood that we will see an economic downturn sometime soon. That is up from the 15% it projected earlier this year. And now to politics. All eyes are on the South after several states across the region held crucial primary elections. Alabama Congressman Mo Brooks lost his Senate bid to Katie Britt. Brooks, who echoed former President Trump's claim that the 2020 election was stolen, was originally backed by Trump. Former President Donald Trump initially backed Brooks, but then rescinded that endorsement after he struggled in the polls. Meantime, in Georgia, voters rejected two candidates backed by former President Trump. Lost former Democrat Vernon Jones lost his bid to businessman Mike Collins, the son of late U.S. Representative Matt Collins, and former chairman of the State Ethics Commission, Jake Evans, fell to emergency physician Rich McCormick. So for more on all of this, we want to bring in Tia Mitchell. She is a reporter at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Tia, thanks for joining us right now. This is what we always say. What does it mean, right? What does it mean about Trump's influence? What do these two losses by Evans and Jones, say about former President Trump's influence on Republicans in the state of Georgia?
Well, even more so than some of the losses Trump experienced during Georgia's first primary in May, these are substantial because these were for open congressional seats where Trump, wasn't up against, for example, an incumbent. All of these guys were, political newcomers relatively, had not held office before. Vernon Jones, who Trump backed, was the only previous office holder of the four, and he did not win. Now, again, I think it also showed the limitations to Trump's endorsement. Vernon Jones wasn't a great candidate to begin with, a former Democrat running in a really conservative district. And it showed that Trump's endorsement alone isn't enough to get candidates over that hurdle. When it comes to the other district, which was in suburban Atlanta, you had Dr. McCormick, who has, a really impressive resume. He's been running for pretty much 3-4 years at this point because he first ran and lost to Carolyn Bordeaux in 2020. And again, so Trump's backed candidate, it wasn't enough that he had that backing. He couldn't overcome a more established and better known opponent. So again, it really shows the limitations. President Trump would like to consider himself a kingmaker. It's not necessarily the case anymore.
Yeah, I think you make a great point that we've been seeing sort of over and over again in primaries, that you can't have like a candidate that's just substandard. You have to have a candidate that has sort of a fighting chance, and especially in an environment where even candidates that Donald Trump does not back are still pretty Trumpy. They may not be talking about the 2020 election, but they share a lot of his very conservative views. Let's put it that way. Chris West won the GOP primary runoff election for Georgia's 2nd congressional district. He was not endorsed by the former president, but he did get the backing of some national Republicans like Newt Gingrich, Tom Cotton, Nikki Haley. What does his win say about the Republican Party overall, specifically in the South?
So the dynamics in the 2nd congressional district, which is rural Southwest Georgia, it's Georgia's only true toss-up district. So as you mentioned, Chris West is the winner. He'll go up against incumbent Sanford Bishop in the fall. But the dynamics were similar. You had a candidate who really didn't have any ties to the district, but he was backed by establishment Republicans, and it was not enough to overcome his shortcomings. This is a rural district where folks would like someone who they believe represents them, knows the district, and that's not how they perceive Jeremy Hunt. Despite some high-profile Republicans backing his campaign, he outspent Chris West, but I think Chris West outworked him. Chris West is born and bred in that region. He traveled the region. He's known because he's a developer. He builds dollar stores around the district. So he had a lot of ties to that region, and he was able to paint Jeremy Hunt as a carpetbagger backed by national Republicans. In that district, the voters said, we don't want outsiders telling us who should be our nominee.
State Representative B. Wynn won the Democratic primary runoff for Georgia's Secretary of State. She's going to be facing GOP incumbent Raffensperger. When I saw his testimony yesterday, I kept on thinking, wow, I wonder what Georgia voters feel now, how they feel about him now, especially when they can see all that he endured in the face of that pressure campaign. Do we know, what the general feeling is about him, and whether or not his participation in the hearings are going to have an impact on his race?
I think there is a lot of goodwill from, moderates, independents, people in the middle who are persuadable. There's a lot of goodwill regarding Secretary Raffensperger because he did stand up to Trump. He was, the brunt of a lot of pressure from the former president and his allies. There's that infamous phone call from Trump that made Raffensperger known nationally. And so he does kind of have this reputation for standing up, doing the right thing, protecting the integrity of Georgia elections. And I think that will make him tough to beat in the fall. What B, Win, and Democrats say is that, don't forget, Raffensperger is still very conservative, even though he stood up to Trump and, resisted request to overturn the election result. He still pushed forward and backed the state's new election law that really responded to those lies and misinformation about the election. It changed some longstanding rules in Georgia without really much need or stated goals other than this is what Trump supporters want us to do. And so what B. Wynn is saying is that she's going to ask voters for a change and say Raffensperger, despite the things he did to stand up for Trump, still leaves much to be desired when it comes to administering the state election. But again, that's going to be a really tough message because Raffensperger's brand right now is standing up to Trump, resisting that pressure, and protecting the integrity of the general election in 2020.
Boy, oh boy. Once again, Georgia is going to be the state to watch. Tia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the time now is 7:55. Here's a look at what's coming up today. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell will likely testify before the House Oversight and Reform Committee this morning. He's facing questions over an investigation into the Washington Commanders and allegations of a hostile workplace culture. Plus, First Lady Jill Biden and iconic tennis player Billie Jean King will celebrate the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Today, the landmark legislation aims to offer women and girls equal opportunity in education and sports. Plus, a California man accused of plotting to kill Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh is expected to appear in court today for a preliminary hearing. Officials say that the 26-year-old traveled to Kavanaugh's home in Maryland armed with a gun and ammo earlier this month and planned to murder him. And before all of that, we're going to be talking with CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson in our 9 o'clock hour about the Supreme Court gearing up to possibly take on a new elections case. You can stream that conversation at about 9:30 Eastern. If you are heading out the door, hey, why don't you take us with you? You can access all of our CBS News national and local streams for free anytime, anywhere on the CBS News app. CBS Mornings is next. I'll see you in an hour.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It's gonna be big!
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars. Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year. I have no idea how much money I have made over the past year. That's like, wow!
Big rewards.
There's gold in them, there hills, as they say.
Bigger risks.
The market's down, but it's going to bounce back. It's crypto.
Is it a gold rush or fool's gold?
It's our metaverse, our story. Peace out, y'all.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Stream now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
This week on 60 Minutes,
That's incredible.
The 60 Minutes.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
Are you ready for some tough questions?
Let me ask you this.
You know how this sounds.
What's your response to that?
60 Minutes Sundays on CBS.
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
Let's get the forecast from our partners at the Weather Channel.
Here we are in our virtual view.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
This is our virtual view, what it actually looks like.
Those are some of the best graphics I've seen.
Spare no expense, Gail. We experience the weather in a whole new way.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative,
Da-da-da-da.
and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
We found it.
You're kidding